Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of my EdTech Life. Thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful day. And wherever it is that you're joining us from around the world, thank you as always
Mm.
for all of your support. We appreciate all the likes, the shares, the follows. Thank you so much for engaging with our content and sharing our content. Thank you so much to all our new listeners as well. We definitely appreciate all of that love. Thank you, thank you, thank you. As you know, we do what we do for you to bring you some amazing conversations and amazing guests. And of course, as always, today is no different because we have an amazing guest and an author that we're going to be talking about their new book release. So I'm really excited for you to meet Becky Keene. Becky, how are you doing today?
I'm great, thanks. Happy Friday. We're recording on Friday.
Yeah, we're recording on Friday, so hopefully you guys are having a wonderful, wonderful Friday as well. So thank you, Becky, for being here. I'm really excited to connect with you. I know I've been a long time follower and then scrolling through TikTok too, just been loving the content that you're putting out with your TikTok walks and talking about AI and just kind of everything leading up to your book and so many great things there. So I'm really excited for all our listeners, current listeners, and any new listeners that are joining to get to connect with you. And before we dive into our great conversation, can you give us a little brief introduction and what your context is within the education space?
Oh, absolutely. I am an educator first and foremost. I still identify as an educator, although I'm not in a classroom full time anymore. I'm not in a district full time, but that's my heart. I spent 15 years working for a large school system south of Seattle, Washington. I've taught everyone from little tiny 8-year-olds through adults. And I've spent the last 10 years specifically focused on adult professional learning in education and primarily ed tech, although my background is in literacy. So it's been a journey.
Excellent. So now we're going from that literacy now in the edtech space to, AI literacy and AI optimism. Like I mentioned to our audience members, we're definitely going to be talking about your new release that we have right here, AI Optimism, a
In your
guide
hand.
to, yeah, in my hand. And so I'm really excited for us to talk about this. So I want to ask you, Becky, just to kind of start off the conversation, is what inspired you to write AI optimism and how do you personally define AI optimism within the education context?
So I have been involved in the AI movement for the last few years, like many of us. And I started to notice some trends that really bothered me. I started to notice that over and over on the social media groups I was a part of, at conferences, I was seeing this trend toward one of two directions. One was, oh no, the world is ending, right? We're all going to die. The robots are taking over. Just a lot of fear based decision making. And the other was the oversimplification of this powerful tool we have in front of us. So, ed tech companies, I'm not going to blame educators for this, but ed tech companies really focusing on these very, very low level uses of AI, just constantly pushing. You can make a worksheet, you can make a quiz, you can make a lesson plan. And unfortunately, that is just really not where I hope this tool ends in education. So for me, it was kind of more about I felt that I had something to say and I wanted to capture everything that I had, kind of been swirling around in my head as I go on walks and walk my dog and do different things. I kind of had all these thoughts brewing and I finally thought, okay, I want to write something about that. And I had been familiar with the SAMR model for the last 20 years. And so I just started really thinking through, it's okay to use AI at that S substitution level in many cases. And that's where most of us got started using AI. But let's not end the journey there. And so, one little fun fact you might be interested in is I wrote the entire book before I had a title. Because the title was not the point. The book was the point. And so after everything was written, my editor and I had some conversations. I had a couple other close friend conversations and said, okay, what do I really want to call this? And that's when we came up with AI Optimism as the platform. But it's the
Oh,
content that I wanted to talk about first.
love it. And there's a lot to unpack there in that statement because I along with you, obviously, we have, very similar circles and, in a lot of the chats and a lot of the social media platforms and so on. And so, and even as part of my dissertation study, that
Right.
exactly
Oh,
what you mentioned.
congratulations, by the way. We have to stop
the-
for just a minute. You just made a major announcement, and I'm so incredibly happy for you. That is obviously a huge journey, and congratulations.
Thank you, Becky. I really appreciate it. But it really lines up with what you said because, as you said, it was like a split into like two factions. The oh no, like let's resist this because of just the unknown, the fear of the unknown, losing control. And one of the things that I've learned in doing PD, and especially when you're going to implement something, a lot of the pushback that you get, it's not so much that you're adding something to the teacher. Yeah, a lot of times it's really they feel like they're losing that control. And so maybe for a
Mhm.
lot of them, it was that loss and fear of that control that they once had. And then, of course, you've got the other speedboat side where it's like, hey, let's do this, let's go. But like you mentioned, at that very low level. And so I really love what you said about the SAMR model because I know I had talked to you a little bit and asking you about this model and saying because of the speed and how fast platforms are evolving and moving, is this a great model to still continue using? And I'm thinking, yes, it still is because it doesn't I feel, and this is my opinion, and other guests that I have interviewed that were part of the study, it was really they're stating the use of AI has been so low level where it's just substitution. And I think you and I can agree that we've seen a lot of technology that has come through and okay, we've got Chromebooks now. Okay, so now instead of a physical worksheet, now I'm going to give it to you digitally, but you're still annotating. So I was like, okay, so we're just substituting the physical for that digital. And it just seems like we get stuck on that S, and there's some teachers that are great at augmenting, so they go to that next step. I recently had a guest on, Joe Christensen, who pretty much mentioned it's like we're pretty much just stay stuck on the S and we never full on go into the R. So I love that you mentioned of your ideas and thinking how the ed tech companies are kind of selling it into, yes, we're going to help you do your lesson plans faster, we're going to help you answer or create emails faster, do these newsletters a lot faster. But how is that going to augment what you're doing? How is it going to modify? How is it going to reinvent or redefine education? So I want to ask you here, I know that you emphasize the SAMR model in your book, so tell us a little bit about how you see that we can take this to that really next level, or how ed tech companies can do better in getting us into the A, M, and the R, the augmentation, modification, and redefining the content.
Well, that is totally what the book is about. So the book starts with the AI Optimism framework, which is three core principles: privacy, praxis, and prompting. And that really, the whole beginning of the book talks about educators taking a step back from, oh, I want to try an AI tool. That's my least favorite comment in the whole world is like, I want to try this tool. And as an instructional coach, someone with a decade of instructional coaching experience, I would always say, no, no, we're not here to try a tool. We're here to do best practice and to think about pedagogy first. So the praxis part of that conversation is really that. Think about what you want your students to achieve. What do you envision this learning experience looking like for your students? Do you envision they all sit down and fill out a worksheet? In which case, we can end the conversation. But if you envision them being engaged and empowered and excited about what they're doing, then that's something that we have to set aside and then consider tools that keep student data safe. That's the privacy component. And also, how am I using the tools available to really prompt richly? And we see a lot of these, I call them easy button tools that are helpful to get started. Absolutely. But they shouldn't be where we end with AI because all they're doing is churning out predictive, pattern-based, very didactic content in many cases, when we could be using our prompting skills to do more. So it's starting with those three core principles in mind, and then assessing, and I have a wheel framework, and there are 6 categories around the edge of the wheel, and then assessing what do we want to do. And it's probably one of those 6 categories. I'm trying to design something or create something or support my learners or analyze data, right? So it's thinking about the task next, and then having a little self check on how much do I want to invite AI to be my assistant for this task, for my pedagogical purpose. So AI optimism is this decision-making process that starts with what I want to achieve. In the middle is what I'm trying to do. And at the end is the tool that's going to support me and my students the best. And so, to answer your question, with the SAMR model in mind, I then have a choice. Do I want to use a tool that meets my needs that sits at a substitution level? Or do I want to use that incremental innovation process to move forward into a MRR? And that might change what my entire assessment looks like. That's the point of the R, right? Redefinition, things that weren't previously possible. But it might also just be some small tweaks along the way that help me build more student voice, more engagement, more autonomy, more productivity, more creativity, more students as creators, whatever I'm trying to achieve. So for me, it's about that decision along the way.
Excellent. I really love that, and I think that's something that a lot of teachers do have in mind, but I think sometimes it's just the excitement of the tool and working in as a digital learning coordinator for many years is we bring a platform in and then all of a sudden it's the hype is gone and it's
Right.
but then what I notice is they never or we never really go in a lot deeper than that superficial that got them all excited and it's like, well, okay, we already used it. Like, okay, like the glitz and the glamour and the shine is gone and now it's like, hey, well, I want to use that app because it just has like one additional component to it. But wait a minute, I mean, this does the exact same thing, but have we even gone deeper into it? And I think that we've gotten into that trend where we just hop from app to app to app to app,
Yeah.
and we really never dive in deep. And so I love what you mentioned too about, it's okay to slow down, but see where it is that you want to take your students and see how you may get them there in a balanced approach with, even no tech, little tech to that final product or that tech platform that's really going to help you modify and redefine and do something that was once inconceivable, to do that, and I know they mentioned that in the SAMR model. So I think that's something that as educators, we really need to just kind of slow down and say, it's okay. Like, let's look at the goals first. And like they always say, it's like task before apps. So let's see, what is the
Mhm.
task? What is that final outcome? What's the process? And what is the final product? And what's the best tool to get us there? So I really like that. And so I want to kind of talk a little bit and continue that conversation because in the redefinition chapter, you talk about AI enabling tasks that were once inconceivable, things that we didn't think about first, as opposed to just substituting. But how else might we take that app to that next level to really enhance the learning experience? So, how do you balance the excitement of doing the redefinition and doing something inconceivable with the excitement and the possibilities uh, of students, doing something that they never thought they could, but also balance that with the over reliance of maybe a particular tool for the problem solving aspect of it.
Right. So that that really comes down to the question that I talk about in the very beginning of the book, which is helping students understand how to answer the question, does this use of AI limit my learning? And I know it probably seems really like, pie in the sky, like there's no way our kids are actually going to do this. But I think these red light, green light models that we've adapted to the use of AI, where we're kind of telling the students, okay, you can use it for, this purpose for this assignment, but you can't use it for this purpose for this assignment. I feel like at some point we have to start helping them make critical thinking decisions about the way I'm trying to use AI right now. is that limiting me or supporting me? Is it helping me design something that would be previously impossible because maybe I don't know how to code? And so I'm not going to learn that for this assignment, but I'm super excited to create a website without having to learn coding. Or is the point of the assignment to learn coding? And now I'm skipping past all of that really important knowledge that I'm going to need for my career, my goals, my passions, my hobbies. So I feel like helping students understand that question, does this use of AI limit my learning, is going to set them up for success beyond the walls of a classroom where they have a poster on the wall telling them exactly how and when they're supposed to be using.
Howdy, y'all. It's Farmer Fops from Book Creator. Now listen up, partner. If you're wrangling lesson plans and trying to keep your students engaged, I got just the tool for you. Now remember, every student and teacher deserves a yeehaw moment, and Book Creator can give you just that. Book Creator makes it easy to get your students creating, collaborating, and sharing their ideas all in one place. Book Creator turns any classroom into a digital frontier, whether it's interactive notebooks, portfolios, or good old storytelling. Now, did I tell you it plays nice with all the other favorite apps? Egg smash it. I mean app smash it with Adobe, Google, and much more to take creativity to greener pastures. So saddle up and give it a try. Use promo code MyEdTechLife for a 3-month special treat.
Excellent. I love that. And that's such an important question. And I think oftentimes we don't give our students enough credit as educators, and immediately, a lot of the reactions from November 2022 and even still to this day, it's like, oh, they're just going to cheat. They're just going to go ahead and do this and so on and so forth. And but that's our assumption. Yes, there will be some students, and just like we know, there's always, that handful of students that will try and do as little as possible to just get what we need. But it's because it's like, hey, what is it that we need to get an A? And they're just going to give you the minimum, maybe even just a C, because it's like they're not as engaged. They're not, really just getting that attention that they need to enhance that learning experience. So I really like that you talk about that, and that we can possibly now, with the information that is out there, what can we do better to help our students? And I know that starts with the teachers first. So Becky, in your experience, since I know that you do a lot of PD and you're, pretty much everywhere nationwide doing a lot of trainings for teachers, what are some, maybe if you can give us 2 tips for anybody in a leadership role in a school that provides PD, what can we do to help our teachers kind of maybe not think just the plagiarism, the eminent, like just the negative side, and maybe reframe their thinking to seeing more of that potential and then being able to translate that to students?
That's what AI Optimism is all about, right? Is acknowledging the challenges and then still be willing to press forward. So 2 tips. One tip is I always talk, for over 20 years, I've been talking about incremental innovation. Disruptive innovation, it sounds great in a business model, but it's not sticky, and it drives a lot of fear. It feels like a push in rather than this, organic, we're all in this together mentality. So I don't love when school systems come in and they're like, rip the Band-Aid off. We're all doing this thing. We're going to provide a bunch of PD. It's going to change everything. Like, no one likes that. And it's generally not very effective. I've seen those things come and go over time. So I really, really recommend that school leaders and instructional coaches suggest that incremental innovation where we're going to honor where people are now. Because the reality is most of our educators nationwide in the United States are doing great work, and they're doing the best they can. And so, we don't have a lot of people out there just phoning it in. So honor that, and then talk to them about, this is part 2, solving their problems. Because every educator has things they would love to fix, right? Parent communication or student engagement or the workload of scoring, AP and IB sample tests. Like, there's something that they're looking to achieve that is going to improve their life and therefore the lives of their students, because they've now freed up some cognitive space to do more what they love, right? And so being in that problem solver mindset, again, instead of recommending an app like, hey, we're all going to use fill in the blank. I don't want to like throw an app under the bus, but a lot of times those implementations don't fit the needs of all of our educators and all of our classrooms. So rather approaching it with a problem solving mindset of what do you want to achieve and how can I support you getting there? And then going on that journey to figure out what's the best fit, I think is absolutely a more sticky approach that's going to honor the expertise in the room and deliver something that actually shows.
Excellent. I really love that. I recently had a conversation with Kyler Cheatham, who is somebody else that I found on TikTok, and she works with organizations, but she also works with school districts. And she really just echoes everything that you just said right now. It was just, she's mentioned making sure that everybody that needs to be in the room is in the room. And she even went to and stating that if 50% of your room is not filled with end users, then you need to kind of, make that happen to make sure that there is that buy-in and understanding that it's not, like you mentioned, trying to put a Band-Aid, maybe even over a Band-Aid, and then over another Band-Aid and so on. So it's just to making sure that you're finding those solutions and being very active in the problem solving process. And I think that is something that is wonderful, that at the very top, for superintendents, CTOs, curriculum directors, they all need to be in that room, because oftentimes those decisions are left to one person and they're based on maybe one teacher who came back from a conference who's very excited and says, I need you to open this up, or I need you to purchase this. But like you mentioned, understanding that that tool may not be for everybody, and it may not, for every teacher or maybe even every learner. So going back to, let's look at the root of the problem. What is it that we're trying to solve? And then make the best decision there for the whole body there in your district. So I really like that a lot. That's just some really great tips. And obviously the experience that you have in speaking in so many places, even from K-12 to higher ed, that definitely, I love that. So again, guys, the book is AI Optimism. Make sure that you check that out. But Becky, as we continue our conversation, I know recently I saw a post, I believe you were in UT Austin, I believe. Were you working
Yesterday, got a little bit midnight.
Okay,
Yeah.
it was yesterday. So were you working with higher ed there?
Yes, we've been working. So the company I work for, I2E, we've been supporting several higher ed institutions. We've spent a lot of time at the University of Texas, both at Austin and System, so Dallas, Houston, and so on, supporting their AI implementation. So it's interesting because working with higher education, we're not really working with faculty. We're working with operations, business operations, most of the time right now, because we're working with people who are like, this is going to save me hours a day on my job, those automations. And so it's not so much about instruction. And that's been actually really fun, a good growing experience for me.
Excellent. Well, and that's great that I asked that. I really thought it was, with higher ed faculty. But now that you mentioned this, that it's more of the operations, I think like K-12 and higher ed, we look at things obviously in that through that education lens. But then you also see on the outside now, that productivity, and you're working with operations and so on. So I want to ask you, what are some of the things that you get, let's say, a little bit of fight back, or or a little bit on the education side, what do they kind of like fight back on, and in the operation side, what might be some things that they fight back on, just to kind of get a comparison of the education space and the operation space?
So educators, I feel like, push back a little bit on tools that don't really add value. So for example, I was walking through a conference, you and I both go to the EdTech conferences, and one of the vendor booths had a nice big sign advertising that they were so excited about changing like a YouTube video into a PowerPoint with AI so that you could share that with your students. And I kind of just wanted to throw up, to be honest. Like, if that's your use case. So, I just walked through that mentality of, wait a minute, we're We're taking a captioned, dynamic, personalized, right? I can pause, I can rewind, I can rewatch instructional piece, and we're using the best tools we have on the planet to make it more didactic, more central focused, less accessible, less engaged. Like, what are we doing? We're going backwards. And I think that educators do notice when a tool comes out and it's like, this is the opposite of what we want to be doing in education. So there's that pushback of, is your tool actually adding value? Or are you just trying to get me to use it? You know, and I like that skepticism. Part of AI optimism is going, here's what's possible. That's where I want to go. Like, don't limit me by, again, these easy button options that are just stuffing me full of more content to push out to my students. And so I love that approach. In higher education, especially in operations, we see big pushback on data privacy. Because we're working at I2E with medical centers, legal teams, real estate. They're handling contracts. They're handling donor information, right? Alumni relations. There's highly sensitive information flowing through those AI models. And so for them, honestly, we cover out of the gate, like in the first 5 minutes at every session, here's why this is data secure, and here's why that matters for you. And yes, you can use HIPAA for compliant, data, or this is HIPAA for compliant, those types of things, if they're using the right tools, because that's incredibly important, and nobody wants their research in a data leak.
The way we learn is changing. Are you ready to transform education? Welcome to Yellow Dig, where learning isn't just another assignment, it's a conversation, a movement, a game changer. With Yellow Dig, students engage naturally, sharing ideas, exploring concepts, and driving conversations that matter. No forced post, no busy work, just real learning. Educators, you'll see the difference. Higher engagement, deeper understanding, and a thriving community of learners who want to participate. From higher ed to workforce training, Yellow Dig fuels curiosity, collaboration, and connection inside and outside of the classroom. The future of learning is here. Are you in? Yellow Dig, connecting minds and igniting possibilities.
That's very interesting. And going back to what you said, one of the things that shocked me at ISTE as I was walking through the conference is I was approached by an app, and kind of like I was like, is this for real? So they kind of talked to me and they said, yeah, have you heard of us? And I was like, no, like maybe like on social media. And then so they're really giving me the their spiel and everything, and they're saying, this application is for teachers, and this is what it does, and this is what they said. They're like, you see those apps over there? Those apps help the teacher before the lesson. These apps over here help the teacher after the lesson, but we help them during the lesson. And I was like, okay, I'm intrigued. My ears perked up. They're like,
that's a good pitch.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, so how does that happen? He's like, well, you download an application, and then the teacher puts on their, I guess their expectation was the teacher was going to hang their phone here and was going to record while they teach. And I was like, okay, interesting. And then I said, well, what about, students speaking at that time? How is it going to protect their privacy when names are being called out or things of that sort? And the voices, and they're like, well, the teacher wears it really close here, and so they wouldn't hear like the student voices because they're supposed to be wearing it close here. And I said, yeah, but they're still mentioning, there's still going to be some identifiable information bits there. And they're like, they kind of just stayed quiet. And then after that, they're like, well, thank you. And that was it. And I walked out, and it was very scary, but like you mentioned, there are some things where I feel like, wait a minute, like we've already done that, and we've already done that. And yes, the optimism is there, Becky, but sometimes, and I don't know if you feel that way, but I guess maybe the feeling for me was like, we could be doing so much more. But like you mentioned it, sometimes I feel like, are we going backwards?
No, right. Right. Like, did we forget about data privacy when we launched some of these tools, or did we forget about like best practice? Yeah, I totally agree. That
Yeah.
I'm glad you spoke up, and I'm glad that you had that lens of like, hang on, really?
Yeah.
I had a
Yeah.
similar conversation with an app. When I was at ASU GSV, and they said, "Oh, what's the number one concern you hear about when when you're working with educators?" And I said data privacy, and I was talking to like the COO or something, and he said, "Gosh, you're the first person to say that." And I said, "Who are you talking to?" Yeah,
Oh my
so
goodness.
I'm glad that there are people making that
Yeah.
obvious.
No, for sure. And then for me, that's the biggest thing too. And but also just the fact that, you know, you're expecting an educator to hang a phone around them and put it so close right here so it's just picking up. And I get it, it's the voice note thing, and then afterwards it's going to transcribe and maybe give you or offer suggestions. At least that's what it was saying. That's what I took from it. But I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, I don't know about that, but we'll see." But anyway, so Becky, just as we kind of round out this conversation and maybe as we start kind of wrapping up, I did want to ask you, I mean, your thoughts on this, because I know that this is something that always comes up and I see it on LinkedIn. I know as part of my study, there was a lot of guests and a lot of authors also that came on, and even, from both sides, is the use of AI. If you are a school that is very well funded, well, good for you. You're awesome. You get access and you will not have to worry about this. But if you are a school that is very underfunded and may not have the means to provide students those same similar tools because I mean of the cost of it, the talk is it's always going to it's going to create more of that divide, not only in the learning aspect, but just obviously in equity access. So
Yep.
can you tell us in your experience, what might we be able to do? Well, maybe not as educators, but maybe, I guess, maybe as a platforms, what might be some advice for platforms to say, hey, you know what? Like, we see what you're doing. We don't want that divide. What can we do to provide equal access?
I 100% agree with you that I feel AI has created a larger equity gap right now in many scenarios. And it's heartbreaking because AI is the one tool recently that could be an equalizer. Um, so my advice to EdTech companies is, and as much as we might hate the freemium model, I think it makes sense to offer a lot of what is student facing. So like a school AI or a chat GPT, Gemini, Copilot, whatever the school is using scenario where the kids are engaging. Canva is another example where the kids can engage with AI, offering that freely available, right? That tells us, and those are safe for education tools that, we know have good data privacy agreements. So for the schools to be able to at least have an entry point, right? If one
Mm.
teacher or the building itself is like, we want to do this, then they can get set up and get started. The premium features, I get the people that are running these companies have jobs and they have, they have operating expenses and they have AI costs. And so, yes, keep a paid model if the district wants analytics, for example, or, a dashboard or these deep dive tools that give high level oversight into what's happening in the system. But we don't compromise privacy and we don't compromise access.
I
Those are
love
my
that.
two
No,
requests. I
that
ran
is
along.
no, that is wonderful. And and the reason that I asked that question, and it was one that, yeah, actually wasn't really planned, but it's this morning again. I woke up to LinkedIn and saw a post that somebody just openly posted that said, "Hey, we wanted to get a quote for this specific platform," and they said it was for 150 students and 50 faculty, 38,000. I was like, 38,000. And so I'm thinking to myself, what and all is involved in all of that? It's 200 people using this and it's 38,000. And so my thought process, and also just because going by the comments, is it based on, of course, usage? I mean, are you going to get those users that are going in there and obviously the price of tokens? And as that goes up, obviously platforms need to offset some of those costs depending on where they are connected to as far as APIs are concerned and things of that
Sure.
nature. So, I mean, that from the very beginning has been one of my biggest fears, Becky, honestly, is that you have these wonderful platforms that you get a quote and you're like, okay, this might be doable. But then that fear that based on what may happen, based on what large language models do, and as far as the pricing, all of a sudden from one year to the next, like I mentioned to you, the recording app that I used to use jumped
Right.
like double in price or maybe even 2.5 times. And now that district is out and they can no longer use that. Or, then the company may go out of business because they can't work with that model. So it's
Right.
it's definitely very interesting and a lot of things to think about there as far as on the leadership side and making sure that you do what's best. So thank you so much for sharing your tips too, as well, because that's definitely something that's very important. So, my last question to you, Becky, it also is like, again, there's always a lot of pushback, and you've got the teachers that are, on one side of the aisle, the other side of the aisle. And I always, like I said, I always want to bring just a conversation in the middle. Where can we meet? But my question to you is I know that you advocate for AI for AI as a partner in education and of course, it's not there to replace teachers, obviously. But what about the other side? That might say, well, you know what, this might eventually lead to teacher redundancies. They kind of just feel that way, like we're just giving too much to AI. Well, how might you respond to them and just say, hey, this is where we're at now, and this is how we can move forward.
I think it's a very real fear. It's happening in certainly all sorts of industries, right? Where people are realizing, oh, AI can do my job in a way that's either more efficient or more cost effective. We see it in radiology and art. There's all these field coding. There's all these fields right now that's happening in. Teaching is a predominantly humanistic field. But I will say, and this is, maybe not the most empathetic response, but I was talking to a teacher recently, just a couple months ago, face to face, who said to me, what is it I'm doing that AI can't replace? And I just looked at him and said, maybe you need to teach differently. Like if that's what you see, if you see that everything you're doing in your day as a teacher could be done by an automated tool that doesn't know your students, that doesn't build a relationship, that doesn't care about them as individuals, that doesn't see what they need, like, goodness, let's do some self-reflection then.
Yeah.
And maybe how you can be acting differently. So that's not a call to action, or it's not meant to be snarky. It's meant to be more that reflection on, if I am spending most of my time as an educator asking kids to read pages out of textbooks or watch videos or even participate in an interactive simulation and then giving them a quiz on it that I can auto grade, then you're right. A lot of that can be outsourced to an AI tool. And so let's kind of get back to the root of why many of us became educators to begin with. And that was because we love the joy of teaching, of being a part of kids' learning journey, of seeing that light bulb turn on, of making a difference in kids' lives. And maybe the education system that we have no control over, you and I, as individuals, has taken us to a place where we feel trapped into this model of, disseminating information and collecting knowledge checks. And so it's such a bigger issue than an individual teacher. But I think it can start with individual teachers, kind of reclaiming that power over, like, these are things that I bring to a classroom, uniquely and human, that an AI tool can't replace. So it comes back to empowerment and building that optimism of, what do you have to offer? No one can replace.
Oh, I love that. And that's and your comment. I take that. It really resonates with me because even along with my career, there's been times where I was like, you know what, like things might be getting a little difficult or what's going on, what's happening. But once I turned the mirror on myself, like you mentioned, that important part of self-reflection, I was like, oh, okay. It's like I'm the one that needs to change things in order for my circumstances to change. So maybe like you said, as educators too, just kind of reflecting on our current practice and what might be something that we can do to, like you mentioned, reclaim that joy and reclaim, what we used to do and reclaim that optimism and just going forth and doing our best, what's best for our students. And I know that that's the difficult part too many times because you've got directives that come from, the top and they kind of move down. And teachers, we definitely love our autonomy where we are the experts in the room. And as long as that we cover our teaks, it doesn't matter how we may be covering it. One of the best advice that I ever got, since I came in from business into education, not going through the traditional education route, but I had one leader, one principal always said, look, Mr. Mendoza, I really don't care how you teach the standard as long as you stay within this box. It's almost like a sandbox. You can play around and do whatever you like and teach it however you like, but as long as you cover what you need to cover, just throw anything at them. If you want to use the Chromebooks, if you want to use Screencastify, if you want to use anything, just go for it, and of course it's going to look different than what everybody else is doing. But once he gave me that freedom to say like, hey, I don't need to just teach it like everybody else is teaching it, I said, you know what? I'm going to add my own spice of life to this. And the students enjoyed it and they loved it because I was always there close enough to push in that boundary, but never going overboard to where obviously I go against what they're saying, but just stay within those teaks. And students loved it. The students were successful. They enjoyed the learning. They enjoyed the projects. I myself enjoyed what I was doing. And, so sometimes it's just also having a great leader and somebody that understands that. And that can make a huge difference for sure.
That's a comment. You're fortunate to have great leaders.
Excellent. All right. Well, Becky, before we wrap up, I would love for you for our new listeners or maybe even current listeners that haven't connected with you yet. All right. Can you please tell us how they might be able to connect with you on socials and also how and where they may be able to find your book, AI Optimism?
Yeah. So everything comes off of beckykeene.com. If they want to go there, it's linked to all my socials. You can grab me on TikTok or Insta and see the TikTok walks daily. There's a book section of the website that has both my books there, including free study guide, a couple other downloadables. And I will also call out that book study groups at schools can book free virtual author talks with me. So that's something I offer as well. And that's all through my website. So that's the best way to get me is beckykeene.com.
Excellent. And we'll make sure we link all of that in the show notes as well. So please, guys, I definitely recommend this is definitely a great resource for you to bring into your district. And like you just heard it from Becky, author talks, free virtual author talks for book studies at your district. And I think that this could be something that would be wonderful to bring in that team of, again, I would suggest, like Kyler said, if you can have 50% or more of end users in there, along with your leadership, I think that would be a great balance to get some great conversations going. But Becky, thank you so much for being on the show today. But before we wrap up, we always love to end the show with these last 3 questions. So hopefully you are ready for those. So as we know, every superhero has a pain point or a weakness. And for Superman, kryptonite was his weakness. So I want to ask you, in the current state of education, what would you say is your current kryptonite?
I hope I understand the question properly, but I would say the word magic to describe AI just kills me. And there's a couple of companies who do it, and I don't mean it like at a personal level. I really struggle with having educators feel like it's magic because, anyway, not to get on the soapbox, but I feel like it relinquishes their control over what's happening. And they have so much control through great prompting. And when we relegate it to magic, it feels mysterious and like we don't have an influence in what happens. So that bothers me.
That is a great answer. And actually, it really resembles an answer that I had from a previous guest who also said, that if teachers were to understand that a lot of platforms offer just pre-prompts or just, that are already there. But if you actually show teachers the power of, even if it's just ChatGPT and prompting, that you may even, I guess, get better results than what is
Absolutely
there.
better.
Yeah, so those are some of the things. So yeah, that is a wonderful, wonderful response. And like I said, it lines up with many of the guests that I've had here. All right, so question number 2, Becky, I want to ask you, if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
It would say, you can do anything, but you can't do everything. And the why is because I have that sign hanging right here in my office. And it's a great reminder every day of, just because it's possible doesn't mean we should. And being able to say no to things that don't fit my goals and my priorities, but also understanding that if I want to go out and achieve something, I can. And I think everyone deserves that message.
Excellent. That is a wonderful message. Thank you so much. Definitely very inspiring. And it couldn't have come at a better time for me too as well. So that was right now, I just smiled and I was like, ooh, that hit, and it's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And my last question for you, Becky, is if you could trade places with one person for a single day, it doesn't matter who it may be, who would that be and why?
So I really had to put some thought into this question, but I'm going to go with Jacinda Ardern, the New Zealand PM, because I am not into politics at all. If anyone knows me personally, I'm the most neutral. I really like to stay out of it. But I do think that there's probably so much going on that we have no idea about, right? Like we'll blow up angry about something that happened in the world, and we don't know 99% of the decisions that happened and why. And she's doing such an amazing job in a country that I have gotten to visit and love, and I have great colleague connections there. So yeah, I would want to trade places with her and see what it's like to be in that role and to be, inundated with very high level decisions that have tons of context that nobody knows about and feeling the pressure of that. And it would just be interesting. And then I would enjoy getting out. Visit.
Love it. Love it.
Right.
Great answer, Becky. Well, Becky, thank you so much. It has been an honor and a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for sharing so many wonderful gems, great insight, and just your book, your work, what you've been working on this whole time, AI Optimism. So please, to all our audience members, connect with Becky. Make sure you get the book. And thank you so much, Becky.
On Amazon. Yeah, I should have probably said that.
Yeah, we'll definitely but hey, we go to your website, we'll be able to find it. So we'll be good to go. Yeah. But Becky, thank you. I appreciate you being so gracious. It's been great to be connected with you for so many years and see the wonderful work that you're doing. And now, get to have you here on my show and get to have a wonderful conversation with you. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. And for all our audience members, please make sure you visit our website at myedtech.life, where you can check out this amazing episode and the other 331 episodes now over a 5-year span. I promise you guys, if you go back through our library or archives, you'll definitely find a little something just for you that you can sprinkle onto what you are already doing great. So please make sure you check that out. And I want to give a big shout out to our sponsors. Thank you so much, Book Creator. Thank you so much, EduAid. And thank you so much, Yellow Dig, for believing in us and believing in our mission of bringing these wonderful conversations into our education space to continue to grow and learn together. So thank you to you all. So you make sure that you check them out too as well. Their links are going to be in the show notes as well. And my friends, until next time, don't forget, stay techie.